Contraception is like bringing a shield on the battlefield against life. So like you're fighting a battle and your enemy is life. It's a pretty like blunt way to put it.
Yeah.
And to make you understand like what you're actually doing when you're involving yourself with that.
You know, and people that allow their sons to be promiscuous and do all kinds of stuff, and then tell their daughters you're not allowed to do this stuff, not because it's not healthy for you, but because people are going to talk. What does that do to the daughter? It says, I'm here to serve my family's reputation. What does it do to the son? It makes him a promiscuous, unvirtuous, and vicious person. And neither of them are going to be happy.
Facts.
Same crew as last week. Welcome, guys. Welcome
Thanks
back.
for having us. Thank you.
Good to be back.
Yeah. What's going on? How's everyone's day going?
Why are you asking that, Father Simon?
Because I know how one person, but listen, we are all in the same boat. We're all, our families are from Iraq. We want to see the country succeed. We want to see the soccer team. So it's not all about you. We're all sad that they got
We partake in
demolished.
We partake
today.
in each other's sufferings.
Horrible, dude. Like very bad. I wasn't watching the game, but I checked the score. 88th minute, Palestine tied it, man, and then they won. And
Have you ever had like a cut, like an open wound, and then somebody just goes and pours salt in it?
I've actually one time I was playing football and the skin on my leg basically came off, like almost like from like right here.
I remember that
On a turf burn.
turf. Yeah.
And I took freaking alcohol and I put it.
Oh my
It
god,
was just
that's a golden move, though.
It was crazy, bro.
Wow.
That's metaphorically happening to you now.
I'm not. I don't know what we're talking about. So
You suppress this out of your memory completely.
yeah, whatever, bro.
Honestly, though, do they still have a chance to make the World Cup?
I mean, they technically, yeah, but it's just like they could have made it. And it's just,
They could have had 3 points.
they threw it away. They really threw it away. I don't think they're gonna. I mean, it's gonna be really hard for them. We'll see.
Were there Chaldean players playing?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
They brought on some young ones. Lucas Shlemoun. There's Charbel Shamoun.
Oh wow.
There was
pretty
Rebel Sulaka. But the coach made a mistake. And
He did?
I don't want to talk about this.
That'd be funny if like a segment became like a sports analysis show. Where like, the TNT like NBA crew.
Remember one time we had a whole episode on the Padres or something?
Yeah.
Like people told me they're like, that was the most boring episode that I've ever
dude.
watched in my life. Although I love that episode because we're talking about the Padres, but we're also talking about life,
Spiritual life. Theology.
I think less people care about sports than we think.
I know, man.
Which is fine.
Maybe a segment would be cool, like just for that. But whatever. For today, we're going to actually continue the conversation we're having last week, and we're going to kind of wrap it up. So last week, we were talking about sin and then mortal sin and venial sin. And we were giving examples based on the 10 Commandments about what would constitute grave matter. And I think the things that we were saying were kind of our opinions, right? Like we're just kind of telling people kind of how we think and giving them examples about how to think about these things. And so now we're going to talk about the 6th and 9th commandments with stuff like that, about what would be considered as grave matter.
So name the commandments.
So the 6th commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery, and then thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. Basically, I just want to start by saying that the reason why sometimes you'll get people coming in and saying, I committed adultery, and it's like an 8-year-old kid, and you're like, what the heck? Well, like this kid he's not married. He did not sleep with another woman who's not his wife, obviously, So that's what adultery technically is. But the reason why people get so scrupulous about it, maybe, or they think that they're committing it is because of what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that if you look at a woman with lust, you commit adultery with her in your heart. So the spectrum is anywhere from a married person sleeping with another person and looking with lust. That's kind of what adultery is. So there's a lot there. What do you guys think? What do you guys think we should kind of start?
I think clarifying terms is good.
Mm-hmm.
So adultery is very, very particularly cheating on your spouse,
Yeah.
right? By way of sexual contact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fornication, on the other hand, is a different sin. It's having sex outside of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lust in the heart, although Jesus calls it that he's already committed adultery in his heart or through lust, right? That is analogous. It's not exactly adultery. It's like adultery, or it leads towards adultery, or it is in the likeness of adultery. So it falls under the same category of adultery, but it's obviously not on the same level. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make. Like lusting in the heart is as bad as sleeping with somebody other than your spouse, which is just not the case.
So you talk about like as bad as, so that means that obviously that action is more grave. So there's a gravity when it comes to these sins.
So there's degrees of gravity when it comes to sin. Yep. And it's not to excuse lust, by the way.
Uh-huh.
But I think, look, in my experience as a priest, I think what I've seen people struggle with the most in understanding is they confuse temptation with action, with sin. So a lot of people will say, I lusted in my heart. And then I asked the question just to like clarify for the person, was that an intentional act or was it like a fleeting thought? And a lot of people will say, no, it's just a fleeting thought. And I say, okay, that's not a sin. It's not a sin unless it's intentionally done. Like you're actually brewing this over in your mind, knowing that you're doing it and knowing that it's wrong. But otherwise, it's a temptation. There's the 7 deadly sins. What we call the 7 deadly sins are actually originally called the 8 logismoi, which are the 8 thoughts. And this was development of the early church fathers. And the most prominent church father that talks about it is this abbot. His name is Evagrius. And he really like systematizes it. The 8 logismoi, these are the 8 evil thoughts. As opposed to 7 deadly sins developed by the popes in the Latin church. And they become sins, but really originally they're thoughts, which is true. Lust as a thought is understood by the early church as a temptation, as an evil thought that leads to sin, but is not yet a sin until it's intended. So the idea is sin begins in the thoughts, and a thought turns into a desire, which turns into a temptation, which turns into an action, which is the sin. But the early church focused on the thoughts as the kind of origin of sin and said that's where the battle is. It's in your thoughts. You haven't yet sinned, but you have to watch it.
Jesus too, by the way. I mean, the church did that because Jesus did it. Like in the thing that he said about looking at a woman with lust, he wants it to go to the root of the problem, to the beginning of the problem. He doesn't only want you to be acting good when it comes to your like exterior life, but he wants it to go interior. That's a lot of what the Sermon on the Mount is about.
That's the development of the New Testament. That it went from just external actions following of the law, and then it interiorized it in the heart. So it is absolutely true. I think what Jesus says obviously is right. You can so much lust in your heart, towards a woman that's not your wife, that you actually commit sin. That you're actually in a sense, you have indulged yourself into this action without having done it externally, but you've done it in the heart. And what you do in the heart matters because it is the origin of the whole person. The core of the whole person.
Yeah, it matters a lot. He comes to circumcise the heart, as the new covenant is all about. It's based on that, so that it's along with the actual physical temple where we all gather as a community to worship God. I think the New Testament really brings to light that your heart is now supposed to be a temple also, where God dwells. And part of his dwelling there means that the love expressed from that heart has to be rightly ordered.
That lust of the heart, maybe people they don't know to what extent that can become, mortal.
Yeah.
Or
because they think if they just had the one thought or the one look, they've committed a mortal sin.
Yeah. Yeah, you just got to go back to like, are you like fully, knowingly, intentionally? Like, I think it becomes like the gravity changes, especially when you're using outside things to indulge, like pornography, for example. That's a type of lust of the heart. You know, and I think when you're reaching these stages, then the matter becomes more grave, definitely. And that's, I think, in you know, in today's day and age, especially on like social media, you might like, you know, be on your phone and oh shoot, like something comes up, you know, you get out of that right away. You don't indulge in that. That's not even a sin, I would say. But you know, you entertain it, you indulge it. You're opening the realm for really sin to cross your mind, and the more time you will spend on it, I think the gravity definitely will increase to something grave.
So how do you guys deal with it? Like, you know, obviously without going into too much detail or any detail about particular cases, but how do you normally deal with it when it comes to confession? Like when, let's say somebody just comes in and they just confess lust. That could be a million different things, you know? So do you ask specifics? How specific? Do you say like what the action is that you did?
So for me, like if someone comes in and says, I committed lust, I'll ask, did you mean you thought about something in a lustful way, or did you act on it? And usually whatever answer they give, I leave it there because it's clear enough when it comes to like, you know, giving a penance or to understand where this person's coming from. Yeah.
Did you think about it or act on it?
Did
That's what you said?
You thought about something lustfully, or did you act on it? That's what I'll ask.
And then if they say I acted on it,
they know how to answer after.
They know how to answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they say that they acted on it only. It's like, did you do it with another person? To what extent? Did you do it with yourself?
Yeah. That's also important, I think, to ask.
I basically go through that. Like, do you mean lust in the mind or lust in action? And then I only get as much detail as, like, you know, because what are you supposed to confess in the confessional? You're supposed to confess the object of the sin. And that's, for me, all I feel like I need to know. I don't really ask for details. I just want to make sure that the object is specific enough that they're confessing the sin, that not so broad that they're just, you know, leaving it an open question. So it's not for, and I'm sure this is true of every priest, but it's not for my curiosity. I'm not curious about that stuff at all.
Yeah. Honestly, me too. And usually, like most of the time, I know what they're saying or trying to say.
Yeah.
And I just like, and I understand that, and I leave it. You know, they have their own words of in which they put it in. So I kind of respect that and leave the rest up to God. You know, rather than me being human in the confessional listening. Like I don't care. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would you guys say, as like, you know, kind of guidance for someone who is going to confess things of this nature? Would you guys say that when sexual sin is committed, the gravity increases when you've involved someone else?
Definitely, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to kind of like make sure that if someone's listening to this, studying this, and like wanting to increase in their awareness of how to confess properly, thoroughly, and recover from the confession as well, that they understand like why this kind of sin should be avoided. Not just that it's wrong, but that you're involving someone else in sin too, and probably not a good place to go.
There is on that note, there is, because what's the sin in the heart of lust really about? Like, why is it a sin? It's not an act of lust to say like, oh, this person is beautiful, to recognize their beauty as a creature of God, whatever. That's obviously not a sin. But it's to objectify the person and to see them as parts, not as a whole person, but to see them as parts. Specifically as an object of my pleasure, which means that this person's beauty exists not as a reflection of God's glory or God's beauty, but for me to take pleasure in. That's an animalistic thing. And so in that regard, you know, is a sin worse when it involves another person? Does the gravity increase? Well, yes, it does. And I think bringing the very unfortunate reality of pornography into the conversation, many people will think that that's not involving another person, but I think that it absolutely is, because we're materially participating in their act. We're involving ourselves with the thing that they're doing just by watching, because we're providing them a platform.
Yep.
So, depending on certain circumstances or kinds of sin that are confessed in this context, gravity can increase, right? I think another important question to consider is also, even though gravity is increasing, how much do I know? Or how much control do I have over a certain situation to understand the degree of my sin? So, for example, like, engaging in a sexual sin with somebody else, obviously this is wrong. Obviously, this is a very easy thing that can become a grave matter, right? But like, let's say someone doesn't fully understand why, like the explanation you just gave, this is a sin. Doesn't that factor into like their culpability? Wouldn't you say that as well?
If ignorance, ignorance mitigates culpability, but then the moral tradition talks about vincible and invincible ignorance too. There's a distinction here, which means invincible ignorance is not knowing something that I have no ability of knowing. Vincible ignorance is being guilty of being ignorant. I'm acting in ignorance, but I should have known not to have done this thing. So what I'm guilty of is not exactly the action, but the ignorance of the moral depravity of the action.
So let's just say, just to get a little specific about how people think when it comes to sin. Sometimes people think that the only thing which is a sin is to actually complete the sexual act and to have sex, So sometimes people think that that's the main thing and that they can do everything else, but not that. And that is obviously not true, because there's different gravity for sure. And obviously completing the sexual act is the ultimate way of breaking the sixth commandment, unless obviously it gets into, perversion and, a lot of other stuff, but that's the main thing that people think about. But there are other ways to break it. And Jesus is the one who kind of sets the tone for us when he says about the looks.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of important things to talk about when it comes to this. I think we should also say that if there's any parents that have this on and there's kids,
Disclaimer.
Maybe we should put that in the beginning of the episode. Yeah.
If there's any parents watching this and there's kids around, it's up to your judgment. Obviously to let them listen to however much of this you want to let them listen to, but that should probably be said.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a scrupulosity that comes with it too, that I think we should discuss, because what do they call it? In France, they had this actually psychological disorder that was diagnosable. That was called it's called the Catholic malady. Okay, that's what they actually termed it in their version of their psychology book, a handbook or whatever. Which is a hyper scrupulosity about all things sexual, which essentially sees all forms of sexuality as bad and sullied, and so any participation in it whatsoever as sin. And then that develops a kind of fear of all things sexual, and creates an anxiety about it, as if somebody is constantly offending God because they have these feelings or thoughts or whatever it is. So it's good to look at this from its positive perspective, which is the marital act is a very holy act as such, and so holy that it actually imitates God as creator and brings forth life. That's the purpose of it. And insofar as it's fulfilling its purpose, it's an extraordinarily holy, good act, right? And that's, of course, within the context of marriage, being open to life, and so on and so forth. Sexual sins are so grave and so depraved only because of how good it's supposed to be in its design. So if somebody has weird feelings about this stuff, of course we do. I mean, I think that that by which we came into being, which is the union of our mom and dad, okay, by which we came into being, is also the greatest wound that we have, and so the place where we're the most disordered, let's say, because of the fallenness of sin. So if somebody has weird feelings about it or whatever, I don't think anybody should be constantly afraid and anxious about their weird feelings in this area, but that we should constantly aim at chastity, which is the right virtue. Chastity is the right virtue. It's purity in this field. Yeah. So I don't want to keep going.
I can read what the Catechism says about chastity.
Yeah.
I have that here. So this is from Catechism 2337. Says chastity means the successful integration of sexuality within the person, and thus the inner unity of man in his bodily and spiritual being. Sexuality, in which man's belonging to the bodily and biological world is expressed, becomes personal and truly human when it is integrated into the relationship of one person to another in the complete and lifelong mutual gift of a man and woman. The virtue of chastity, therefore, involves the integrity of the person and the integrality of the gift.
So there's an important distinction to be made there too. I get this question, pretty often, but like the difference between chastity and celibacy.
Yeah,
You know,
or like
people think-
abstinence.
Or abstinence. People think it's the same. Like, chastity means celibacy, but no. You just read that. Chastity involves a purity of that every human should practice, and have
Even married people.
even married people, and having rightly ordered, sexual desires, and acting about them in the correct context, and so on and so forth.
So celibacy, we're celibate, right?
Yes.
So we're not in any sexual relationship with anybody, and we don't engage in sexual practices. That's what celibacy means. But somebody can be celibate and not chaste,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because somebody can be married and in a sexual union with their spouse, and be chaste at the same time. So the two don't always go together. So chastity is this integration of the sexual being. And integration here means a wholeness or fullness, right? It means all the parts are working together. Everything is well ordered, and otherwise said.
This reminded me of something which made headlines a long time ago when Pope John Paul II was the Pope, when he was going through the theology of the body lectures, and somebody asked him to talk specifically about the line when Jesus says, if you look at a woman with lust, you commit adultery with her. And Pope John Paul II said that this would apply to a man and his wife as well. And that shocked people. But he had the proper understanding of what chastity is, that a man could look at his wife in a sexual, in a perverted way, or he could look at her with love, and in a pure way.
Was that in relation?
I don't know if that's in the theology of the body itself. I think it was like a side comment that he made.
I'm not sure. Yeah. But I don't know if you remember, but was that in relation to contraception, like directly in relation to contraception?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
it was. I mean, that would be essentially like a contraceptive life is reducing the marriage to a sexual one, and causing each spouse to just lust after their spouse.
One time I was doing a paper on this for my moral theology class, and I was reading an article from a Protestant scholar, and he said, contraception is like bringing a shield on the battlefield against life. So like you're fighting a battle, and your enemy is life. It's pretty like blunt way to put it, and to make you understand like what you're actually doing when you're involving yourself with that. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Contraception, IVF is not contraception, but it's another evil
offense against this commandment.
evil offense. Yeah, against the again, it's against life. It's against procreation. It's against everything that God had intended for human beings. So actually, Father David He gave.
Did he speak about those at St. Joseph?
So yeah, I had him do my Bible study at St. Joseph's, and he was talking about beginning of life issues, and he was mainly focusing on IVF. I thought it'd be a really nice topic to talk about because, again, our people are maybe confused or even see it as something good.
A lot of them don't even know.
You don't even know that it's wrong. And he spoke very, very well. He gave a lot of, a lot of facts behind it. I did not know how bad it was until he was, describing it in the way I understood it. Like, it's just as evil as abortion. And you're actually killing more embryos, more life than abortion does through IVF. I don't know if you want to talk.
Not to say anything, like just a clarification about a kid, like maybe somebody watching was conceived as a result of a IVF, and that person still has full dignity.
Oh, for sure,
as a child of God, for sure,
100%. But the process in which IVF does to bring life into this world is evil, right? You're playing God. You're picking and choosing which embryos are better or stronger, and the rest you throw away. This is life. This is when the sperm and the egg meet already. That's conception. The way in which you get the male sperm and the female egg is, outside of the marital act. So that in itself is a sin as well. So the union between the man and the wife is disregarded for. It's ruined. The procreation is being fiddled with, and as well as the pleasure that's coming through it, which pleasure is a part of the sexual act, is abnormal. But
so it's a sin on many levels.
It's a sin on many, many levels, right? And then Father David, he was also talking about how even the church we're in a position right now where I think in America he was saying there's like 78,000 or something frozen eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
These can be human.
They are human. Yeah.
But like potentially like can be in a womb and be so, right? What do you do? What do you do? There's this kind of also this gray area of how to deal with this morally.
Yeah, I have like a question based off of this. So let's say someone did participate in this, but is feeling repentant about it, but was already done. What do you do?
What do you do with the embryos that are frozen, right? Because you can't keep them frozen forever.
Yeah. So do they just get disposed of, or?
The best answer that I've actually heard from a moral theologian was you don't dispose of them yourself, so you don't actively kill them, but you allow them to die, basically. Basically every option is bad.
What about like, can a woman adopt one of these embryos?
So you can't. It's wrong to inseminate into somebody else, into like another mother, a foreign mother or a foreign woman.
That's why surrogacy also is wrong.
It's just
it's a weird. I mean,
it's dark, man. It's dark, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe how dark this is.
Well, why is it dark? It all goes back to the same thing, which is, what does the church really care about? It's not, people say, "Oh, get the church out of my bedroom." It's not about that. The church is not interested in your bedroom. The church is interested in life, and the church is interested in the dignity of the human person because the church is interested in God, in whose image the human person is created, and whose image of God she wants to preserve. Right? So it has less to do with the actions and a lot more to do with the goodness and the dignity of the human person. Like, to construct a human person in a laboratory seems undignifying. And then once you get into all the details about the way that it goes, the way that it happens and everything, of course that just adds to the culpability of it all. But it's the same thing with contraception. Like, why is contraception such a sin? It's because it blocks life, as you said, and it destroys the unitive aspect of the husband and the wife, which produces life, and it reduces them to just sexual objects for one another's pleasure, and that destroys their own dignity.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Catholic teaching on sexuality, which is obviously all based on the scriptures. But a lot of people say like, oh, like why is the church getting involved in all this stuff? Why is the church so strict on this? Well, the Catholic teaching on sexuality, yes, it's kind of weird and it might seem like it's too much and it's awkward to talk about, but at least it's consistent all the way across the board. That like it's the same reason why contraception is wrong, homosexuality, sex before marriage, all that stuff is wrong, and it's based on what Pope Paul VI outlined in the encyclical Humanae Vitae on human life, where he speaks about the two main reasons for the sexual act, which is the unitive aspect and the procreative aspect. So if you take out one of those, then the act becomes not
disordered.
Good. Yeah, disordered. Yeah.
Another thing is like, what else there's a lot of rules for? The tabernacle. Who can walk up to the tabernacle? What's in the tabernacle? Who can handle the things in the tabernacle? What can go into the tabernacle? Where in the church the tabernacle should be? Why? I think it's because it's important. There's Jesus dwelling in the Eucharist in the tabernacle. So obviously there's going to be rules about that. Obviously that's going to be regulated. Obviously we have to be careful about that. The human body, as St. Paul says, you were bought with a price. So treat your body as a temple. The human body is very important. It's a dwelling place of God. It's made to live, not just be created in, but live as an image of God. So of course the human body is going to be something that should be protected, something to be highly regarded, highly respected. And if it's just being objectified, as we've been saying, that's tragic and that needs to be corrected. So that kind of points to the fact that these rules are not just there arbitrarily. There's a depth of reason behind these things, behind these standards that we're held to. Yes, the standards might seem high. Yes, the standards might seem like we can't just go out and seek pleasure and participate in pleasure all the time, but it's for the sake of living an actual human life and not just like a vegetative life or just like a life of the senses, indulging in the senses. That's not what a human is made for. It's not how a human is created.
What do you guys advise people on how to overcome this? Like there's a quote also from the Catechism. It's not the next paragraph, but the one after it says, "Chastity includes an apprenticeship in self-mastery, which is a training in human freedom." So it's a beautiful way of thinking about it. Like you're growing in virtue and in self-mastery. So if somebody has been acting against chastity for a very long time, it's not like they can just flip a switch or just go to one confession and then all of a sudden they're chaste and they're pure. So how do you get from that point to becoming a chaste and pure person?
Well, what I tell people first is that you can't do it without God. Right? So it's important to intentionally ask for His help in your prayer. Like ask for the grace to help you to overcome this, right? And God will give it to you, as well as taking it a day at a time, right? You have to just fight today's battles as if they're today's, and that's the only battles you're going to fight in your life. And when you approach it in that way, it becomes like you become more self-aware. You become more equipped, I think, to battle it, right? When you take it day by day, you're okay. You can map out a schedule for your day, by keeping yourself busy, not spending a lot of idle time. Idle time is probably the worst enemy against this in this battle. Idleness will oftentimes lead to a lot of sexual sin. So avoiding idle time, and really taking it a step at a time, not looking so far in the future or where you want to be a month from now, 2 months from now, but just work on it today. And if today you succeed, wake up tomorrow, work it on again tomorrow.
Give us this day our daily bread.
Really, yeah, exactly. And God will provide, God will sustain you, God will give you what you need. It's really a cooperation with the grace and always asking for His help, and especially in this matter, as well as the rest of the things we deal with in our lives.
So I always, because St. Paul does this, but I compare the spiritual life to like exercising, the health of the body, because there's obvious relationship between the health of the body and the health of the soul. Anyways, so people think of spirituality as this like light switch, I'm spiritual and then I'm not spiritual, or I'm in the state of grace or I'm in the state of mortal sin. Like, it's not really like that. It's not all light or all dark. It's like the body. You can be healthy and then you can get healthier and healthier, or unhealthier and unhealthier, depending on what you do. So how do you get healthy in the body? You don't just go to the gym once, work out, have a good workout, you sweat, and then you leave, and now all of a sudden you're healthy. You're not. You have to do that repeatedly for quite a long time. You have to eat right, and so on and so forth, right? You have to do a lot of stuff to make sure that your body is healthy. And it's the same thing with the soul. It's all about making sure that all the parts work the way that they're supposed to work, in the soul as well as in the body. So in the spiritual life and in the life of virtue and good habits and things like this, it's going to take a lot of effort and time, and it's going to take doing things the right way. I mean, if I tell people that struggle with porn, for example, don't put yourself in a place of the near occasion of sin. If you're idle, don't be idle, and don't be alone or whatever. And if you feel really tempted, do everything that you can to not give into it. You're not going to die. Burn with temptation. It's okay to burn with temptation, but you're not going to die. Replace that bad habit with a good habit. Do something else more fruitful and more edifying instead. And then there's a lot of other stuff that can be said about that. But
if someone wants to change, that's awesome. If someone is fighting, I think they're on the winning side.
Yeah.
If they're trying to fight temptation, you're on the winning side of the battle, and there's going to come a day when you will be victorious.
Mhm.
You will get over this, very heavy burden of things that cause you to fall into sexual sin. So that's one thing. Now, if you want to change, it's not going to happen magically on its own, spontaneously. God is going to give us grace all the time. His grace abounds everywhere all the time. I have to cooperate with it. God's going to give me every opportunity I need to become enlightened on why it's wrong, to become enlightened on how to change, how to improve. There's all kinds of opportunities. So I can't just ignore that and think it's going to go away magically just because now I realize it's wrong or now I want to change. So I have to do things differently. I have to change my circumstances, like you guys have been saying. Let's say this is happening because of social media, because of constant time on your phone. Fast from it for 3 days, 2 days, I don't know. Develop a different kind of pattern to see how your life can change. Your soul is constantly in some kind of conversation. So who are you talking to? What kind of conversation are you having? Like Father Tristan said, if you're not praying, if you're not surrounding yourself with God, who is not just this, creator that we have, but also the example of pure love himself, if you're not surrounding yourself with this kind of example, with this kind of sustenance, it's going to be much easier for you to be attacked by temptation and for you to be defeated by it. Another thing is, I have to ask myself, honestly, if I'm indulging in sexual sin, whether it's by myself, whether it's somebody else, whether it's through a device, whether it's through my own thoughts, if I'm indulging in that over and over, 100% it has an effect on my brain. 100% it has an effect on how my dopamine is processed in my brain and how I seek pleasure in my life and what I think is good in my life and what I think is going to make me happy in my life. 100% it has an effect on that. So if I'm a young man or a young woman who's maybe not even married yet, that's going to affect me growing up into an adult who's eventually going to end up in a marriage and have to deal with these kinds of things in a marriage, in a family setting. So I'm setting myself on a road that's going to make me very unhealthy in how to handle a variety of matters with a husband or a wife, a spouse. So that's another thing. And do I want to end up like that? Do I want to voluntarily put on the shackles of sin over and over to end up like that? Yeah. Do I want to be controlled by a feeling? Do I want to be controlled by a passion? Am I not more than that? Is a human being not more than that? Is a human life not more than just the pleasure that comes with, sexual sins? That's part of why this, happens in the first place, and why, sin continues, is because we tend to not see the fullness of human life, and we get drawn into temptation so easily because of that.
Yeah, people might be very discouraged also when they have fallen so much into these sins and it seems like there's no way out. But I love what you said, just you fighting means that you will be victorious because of Jesus. And that's the thing that we tend to forget. I don't have to fight and win this battle on my own. Jesus already fought. He fought the devil literally, and he fasted, he prayed. He gives us all the graces necessary. So yes, it's good and it's necessary to think about other things you can do, like go take a walk, start to read or start to spend more time with your family. But also don't forget about the importance of prayer and receiving the grace of God. Some people ask me like, what can I do to overcome these sins? And I'll just ask a couple questions. Do you go to mass every Sunday? Okay, most of the time they say yes. Do you read the Bible every day? Do you pray every day? Do you pray the rosary every day? Do you go to Eucharistic adoration? Most of the time they're not doing these things. And sometimes your sin is more consistent than your prayer life. If that's the case, you're not going to overcome it. Make your prayer life more consistent than your sin. Pray multiple times a day. Do these things so that you can receive the grace of God and overcome them.
Amen.
As far as people despairing, it's really true. And especially this one, because again, it's such a sensitive topic. A lot of people do despair because they feel like, and it's just, that's a strong temptation for most people, right? They feel like I'm never going to overcome this thing. And sometimes we kind of have to resolve to that, like, I'm never going to overcome this thing, but Christ can overcome this in me if I allow him to. And that's where we always have to put the burden. Jesus took the burden upon himself. We should put it there. He's offered to take it for us. So we should do that. And knowing that, like, yeah, I'm not the only one that's messed up, so is everybody else. That's just the case. Everybody's messed up in this field. Just like everybody needs salvation, so is everybody messed up, and everybody needs to be reintegrated. Christ wants to do that for us, so we should allow him to. But we should order our behavior in such a way that we allow him to do what he wants to do in us. So instead of being, people say that Twitter, I don't have any social media. People say that Twitter is really like dirty or whatever, right? Instead of spending so much time on Twitter, how about I listen to a good podcast about Jesus Christ? Or instead of watching, I don't know, whatever show is going to have all kinds of sexual content,
watch Feeding Fathers.
Watch Feeding Fathers. There we go. Okay. Or something else that's going to edify me, a movie on it. Like basically order our life in such a way that we allow God's grace to break through instead of stopping that grace from breaking through because I would rather be stimulated in some form or another.
One thing, let's say you don't agree with anything that we've said. Let's say you don't share the same perspective that the church has on how a human being should be rightly ordered in terms of like their composition and stuff like that. Okay, that's fine. Just observe the kind of lifestyles of people or of families that take these things seriously, and then observe the lifestyles of people that don't take this seriously. I'll just leave that there.
Yeah.
You can see in which direction society moves when sexuality is respected, and you can see the other direction. It's in front of us. It's all everywhere in culture. It's everywhere in media. It's everywhere in countries that respect, the nuclear family and countries that don't.
Well, there's this problem, especially in Chaldean families, where they only care about the person's or their kid's reputation, and they don't care about how they actually are. So this leads to them allowing the boys to live a very
promiscuous,
loose life.
This is in families that come to church on Sundays, by the way. Yeah.
But they're strict with the girls. Why are you strict? Oh, because people are going to talk, and the boy can go do whatever he wants. And there's no virtue, there's no holiness. They don't care about that. They just care about what other people are going to think, and so they lock up the girls because of the reputation issue. And like, why is it allowed for a guy to go and do whatever he wants, but not for girls? Because they don't care about virtue and about chastity.
Well, and they don't care about the integration of the person, or what's good for the person, or about glorifying God, or about the sanctification of the soul, or any of these things, or even about what's the health of the future family going to be. It's not about health, internal health, organic health. It's about how am I going to look on Instagram? What are people going to say about me? And what do people say about my family name? And that's just that's vanity. It's the height of vanity, and it's unfortunate. But we set people up for really disastrous lifestyles and grave misery. If you're not virtuous, if you don't have self-control, if you don't have this kind of internal integration, where everything is going the way it's supposed to. If we're not the way God made us to be, we're going to be unhappy. And people that allow their sons to be promiscuous and do all kinds of stuff, and then tell their daughters, you're not allowed to do this stuff, not because it's not healthy for you, but because people are going to talk. What does that do to the daughter? It says, I'm here to serve my family's reputation. What does it do to the son? It makes him a promiscuous, unvirtuous, and vicious person. And neither of them are going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Facts.
Either man, I love this line, governs his passions and finds peace, or he lets himself be dominated by them and becomes unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Who said that?
Catechism.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
It's, it's a form of slavery. It really is. It's a slavery to sin. It's you're in shackles. You're unfree to act and live well.
Yeah, that's why it's annoying when people when sexual sin is the only sin in the minds of people. It's wrong. They obsess over this one, but it's like you can be as celibate as celibates get, and still be totally out of whack. All your passions are messed up, and you just be a glutton. You can be very fine in the sexual place, but if you're a glutton, you're just going to be just as unhappy because you're going to be a slave.
Or you could struggle with another type of sexual sin and judge others that struggle with another one, like homosexuality, for example.
Right.
So many people, they judge, they make fun of, and they bully people that struggle with homosexuality when they themselves are living very promiscuous lifestyles and are breaking the commandment as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what this reminds me of? St. Augustine said in one of his homilies, I have a book on some of his homilies. He said, when the gladiator goes into the arena and defeats a creature like a lion that he's set to be faced with, the crowd is cheering and the crowd wants to see more of it. It's such a glorious display of victory and strength. But when a man defeats a much bigger beast like lust, nobody cares. He's actually ridiculed for it. That was a good point. Even in his day,
Wow,
that was a problem.
Yeah, dude. I mean, guys, like we're talking about guys and how they are free to go do all this. They do it, and one of the main reasons why is because they'll be made fun of if they don't. Like a guy in his mid-20s or like even in high school, he's not going to be proud of being a virgin because it's not going to be praised by the culture. He's not going to be seen as overcoming this thing.
He might even be ridiculed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's like the other extreme too, where sexual sin can lead. It can lead to very perverse things like child molestation and all these other like evil sexual sins. And like, where did that start? I didn't start from out of nowhere. That began with living a life that was constantly indulging. So you're when your desires aren't being satisfied enough, you're looking for that next high. That it's the same thing with drugs, and it can lead down an extremely dark path where you never thought you'd see yourself in the past.
Yeah.
So it's important to get a grasp of this. It's important to
Cheating, like it could lead to cheating too. Like I mean, yes, child molestation, that's a very extreme thing, and it does happen, but it also leads to just being unfaithful because you've allowed yourself to give into these things.
Yeah.
Like a drug addict is not gonna he's not gonna stop wanting drugs if he just has the drug one more time, and it's the same thing with these types of sins. Like they'll say, oh, let me watch porn and that's gonna fulfill my sexual desire and then I'm gonna be calm. No, that's just gonna make it so much worse.
I've had a friend just from a long time ago. He told me one of the saddest things I'd ever heard, which was he said he was addicted to drugs. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, these days that are addicted to drugs. One of them one time said, I don't even do drugs anymore to get high. He said, I just do it to feel normal. Like I need to get back to baseline, which is a very unfortunate thing. But that's what happens when you overstimulate. When you overstimulate, the overstimulation becomes normal.
Yeah, it's pretty sad to hear that from
It is
somebody.
that I've heard that, I've seen that, And it's like when they stop, it's almost like they're relearning how to be human again. Right? And it's that in itself is a sad thing to see. Like, you're an adult and you're getting off the drugs, you're getting off these addictions, and maybe you're not acting normal because you forgot what it's like to be normal. And it's that's the unfortunate reality of what happens.
That's painful, but that's death and resurrection.
It's definitely, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's
like I'm saying, to go through it, like, because especially the way you described it, like learning to become human again after being plagued by temptation. Yes, that involves death to self, but there's resurrection after it. You're going to be human again.
And being human in its perfect form is being like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can thank God for that. That there is a redemption that's available to us. We die. Literally, we die when we're enslaved to something. What dies in us is that free, beautiful, glorious, and noble image of God. And we really kill that thing with enslavement, because the human person is supposed to be like God, free to love, right? And if we kill that because of sin and habitual sin and attachment to sin and things like that, God still loves his image. God still loves us as sons and daughters and desires to redeem us, has redeemed us in Christ, and wants to renew us with our cooperation, and can do it. And the life that comes out of that is greater than had we not gone through that kind of trouble before. So God's grace is beautiful in that way.
So what advice would you give to somebody then who is, maybe scared to go to confession for this, and they avoid confession because they feel ashamed, or they don't want to say it out loud, and they avoid confession for a very long time because of it?
Don't be afraid, and be clear, be specific, so that you can get the healing that you need from this. Don't be too specific, obviously. Like we said earlier, the priest is not there as a curious guy trying to know about your life. He wants to be a minister of healing of Jesus Christ, but you need to know what you're being healed from, and you need to show the wound. And so go receive the healing. That's what I would say. And go put it behind you and move on with your life.
I would say this sin, like every other sin, is a beast. Okay. Every sin is a beast, and we have to slay the beast. Okay. But the beast keeps us down more by shame than anything else. So first, kill the shame by going to confession, saying it to the priest, and then receiving the grace of God and being free from the shame that comes with battling this beast. And then it'll be much easier after that to go and slay that beast.
Yeah.
I would say, like, it's good to realize that you're broken, but the pieces can be put back together.
Yeah.
They give a new life.
That's what confession is. Yeah.
It's a new life. It's resurrected life, as you were saying. So
thank God for his grace.
We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
For by
your cross, you have
saved the world.
Let's eat. Shout out to Capri Cafe in Little Italy. Thank you guys for the coffee and the sandwiches. Ciabatta bread.
The Capri sandwich is nice. I just love like cheese and bread.
The beef sandwich
And the
is also
pesto?
pretty good.
Halfway through, huh? What?
Yeah, tomorrow's Belgu.
Yeah. So this episode will come out on the day after Belgu. One of the things I did is having, giving up eating in between meals, or like having one meal a day when I can, like when I'm not with people. And that's pretty hard. Just being hungry is hard,
You eat dinner though, right? Usually?
Yeah, like if I don't have a lunch meal, I'll just save my one meal for dinner time usually.
I actually really like just having lunch and not having breakfast or dinner.
That's really hard for me, bro.
Because you go to sleep hungry.
Yeah.
You can't sleep enough.
And like
Sleeping
yeah,
hungry
at
is-
night,
Yeah.
like I can get through the day without food for the most part. But at night, it's tough.
Do whatever makes you happy, man.
Self-mastery. What'd you guys give up? One thing.
I give up coffee twice a week, like Wednesdays and Fridays.
Okay.
Yeah. Good thing it's Tuesday.
I am actually on keto for Lent, but this is like keto.
Eat what they said before you, right?
What they said before.
So Capri Cafe, coffee, teas, sandwiches. Good place to grab that if you're in Little Italy.
Mm.
Can I see the ham?
Mm-hmm.
Sham.
Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Which one is dude, I remember I was mind blown. One of the sons of Noah is Melchizedek.
Shem.
Shem, right?
That's a tradition.
It's a tradition and a theory, yeah.
Someone's phone is vibrating here or
Yeah,
no?
Father
Mine.
Christmas.
Father Phillips called me Shane.
Yeah.
Live on the
Yeah,
show.
please.
Hi, Bruno. I'm good. How are you? I'm at St. John's recording for Feeding Fathers right now.
Bakaran Kefe.
Father Simon and Father Nkito and Father Chris. Bakarab Kef. Okay, are they there? Are they ready? Or do they have to make them? Yeah, I will. I'm gonna go now. Okay, bye.
That was anticlimactic. I was waiting for something crazy to happen.
No?
Like live on the phone, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he just asked me to pick up some books.
I think both of us were the ones that didn't know any surat going into the seminary.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn a lot, man.
Actually, yesterday, someone was telling me they were impressed with how much Surah Father Tristan has learned.
God bless them.
That's amazing,
In their
man.
lives.
Good job, man.
How is it when you do a homily now? Like, you write it down.
Yeah. And surahs.
You write it in surat letters.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to read. It's easier to read that way than an English transliteration.
Which looks disgusting.
Dude, I used to do that though, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. As long as you're fighting the battle, you're on the winning side.
Yeah, man. Nice. Fight the battle. Good food. Check out Capri Cafe. Go to confession. Don't be scared. We hope you guys learned from this episode. All right.
Amen.
Amen. Peace out.